Welcome to the EMEA Recruitment Podcast, produced with our friends at Operation Smile, an international medical charity that provides life-changing surgery to children born with cleft lip and palate. To support this cause, please visit our website at emearecruitment.com/operation-smile. In this episode, we welcome Tim Mezheritsky, the Senior HR Director, Global Supply Chain and Europe Operations at BD in Switzerland. He explains why an organisation's vision will only be successful if leaders walk the talk.
So, hello everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the EMEA Recruitment Podcast in partnership with our good friends over at Operation Smile. As my colleague Rose mentioned, we're delighted to welcome Tim onto the podcast today. So hopefully you can still hear me okay, Tim?
Yeah, I can hear you, Paul. And hi, everybody.
Perfect. Great to welcome you as a guest on the podcast today, Tim. We've got a really good range of questions to go through, some of which have come from our network internally, some externally. So hopefully it should be an interesting conversation for yourself and the listeners as well. And the first question really to help you, let's say, ease into the conversation is quite a, let's say, humorous, light-hearted one, really. As I mentioned earlier, the show is run in partnership with Operation Smile. So they're a charity that help children in developing countries who are born with cleft lip and palate. And given they're called Operation Smile, I thought the first question I'd ask you is what was the last thing that made you smile, Tim?
Well, when I was thinking of it, Paul, one thing immediately came into my mind, and it was my last trip, my last business trip, which happened actually 3 weeks ago. It was quite an adventure because we were supposed to have a team meeting in Ireland with the team from the Ireland Plants and Research Center based there. And I was flying there on Sunday evening. And when I got to the airport, the lady at the passport control, she asked me, do you want to go there? Because you might be quarantined. And I thought that, okay, no problem. I mean, why would I be quarantined? I'm fully vaccinated. I have my antigen test with me. So when I landed in the UK, because I was traveling through London, I wanted to visit a plant BD has not far away from London in Swindon. Everything was fine. They let me through. I went to the hotel, went to the plant in the morning. And then in the afternoon, when I was finishing the meetings, everybody was telling me, are you sure you want to travel to Ireland? Because there are new measures being introduced. And I called the travel agent, and the travel agent said, yes, actually, if you want to fly to Ireland, you will have to go to the quarantine and will have to pass through the test and wait for the test results. And I thought, oh no, just being stuck in the hotel instead of meeting the team. So I decided to go back, and I had to travel back to Switzerland and again do another test. And when I came to Switzerland, they just immediately introduced the new rules that I had to quarantine myself for 10 days. So, it was for half a day meeting there in Swindon. I was having such a trouble and such a turbulent time traveling around and overcoming all these bureaucratic hurdles. So now, if somebody would come to me and say, do you want to travel next week? I would say, no. I would rather do a virtual meeting.
And probably the most disappointing thing was all this travel was to Swindon as well. It's not the most glamorous of places as far as I remember. So yeah, all this travel and challenges you went through for a trip to Swindon as well. That it would have been nice if it was something like Barcelona or the Caribbean.
I agree, Paul. But at least I managed to meet the team face to face there. Met with the plant leadership team. So from that perspective, it was good.
No, excellent. And obviously, it's a challenge that everybody is faced in when they're looking after regional roles, the lack of the travel or the inability to travel. And it's such a challenge really in the changes in the way that we work and the way we manage and motivate people. I know that you're very passionate about things like change and getting the best results. And so have you found you've had to really adapt your style quite significantly, given that the thing that you enjoy and you've had huge success with over the years is so much about personal relationships, whether it's business partnering, change, getting results. I mean, it's all about largely the relationships you have with people. So obviously not being able to have those face-to-face relationships as much now. Do you find you've had to change your approach in many ways?
I don't think that I had to change the approach in many ways because, I have some fundamental principles around how to connect with people, how to build trust with my team, with my customers, basically the client groups in the company I support as an HR business partner. But definitely, I miss a lot the interpersonal interaction, traveling around, meeting with people, having an open conversation. And another thing which I genuinely miss is, this opportunity after work to go and have a drink together or a dinner together. This is something which none of the technologies today, unfortunately, is able to replace. And of course, when the lockdowns hit us 2 years ago, I had to think, okay, how do I bring some more fun into working with my team? Because none of my team is based in Switzerland together with me. My team in Europe, the HR business partners for the plants and the distribution centers BD has here in the region, they are all scattered around various countries. And I didn't want to lose this human connection with my team, not being able to travel. And one thing I found very efficient here, I started with the virtual breaks. They were virtual coffee breaks and also virtual meetings where we had some fun together. Now, this industry of virtual team games is developing very quickly. And if you go on the internet, you can find companies which would offer you a virtual quest, a virtual wine tasting session, whatever. And it helps a lot because you still need to find a way to bond the team and maintain this personal connection. So I would strongly recommend that because it motivates the team. It still keeps that feeling that we belong together.
No, it's really interesting. I didn't realize there were companies now set up for that very reason. I mean, it's one of those things with the whole COVID situation. It's been a challenge for many individuals and many companies, but out of it also, there's been a lot of companies that have started up or are doing very well because of their product or service is in high demand. And I guess, as you say, the virtual team games and virtual team approach is something that's not going away anytime soon. And I think you mentioned it yourself there as well. It's important that people have fun and they enjoy their job. They then perform better and it feels less of a job and more like something you're doing with friends around you. And I think that's it's an interesting approach you've had to it. And obviously, you think it's been successful? Because obviously with these things they can be a bit hit and miss, these sort of organized fun events. But you found that they've been successful for you.
Yeah, Paul, you will not believe it, but as I mentioned earlier, you can even do a wine tasting exercise virtually. So there are companies which can send you the samples of wine, I don't know, whatever you select, 7, 10, and then you send it to all the participants of that informal team building. And they can receive it at home, open it. Of course, they need to have a couple of glasses ready. And then there will be an expert with you explaining when you open this very small containers with various types of wines. And this expert will explain what's the difference and the smell. So like in real life, but of course you won't have that atmosphere. Still, people will not stand next to you. But at least the feeling that you are together and you are doing something together. And on the question related to the outcomes, well, in BD, we regularly do the Voice of Associate surveys. And based on the last survey we've done about 5-6 months ago, within the HR organizations in BD, my team scored one of the highest on the organizational engagement and commitment, which indicated that these things, they do help. And the team still hasn't lost that feeling of being together.
No, it's great. It's great to hear. I think that's the best result you can possibly hope for, really, at the end of the day. If you're able to keep that morale and team togetherness, over this time when it's probably the toughest you're going to face, then that's a great advocate for this way of working and for what yourself and BD are doing. And I think, obviously, what a lot of this relates to is company culture. And I know culture is something that's very important to you, something you've had a lot of experience with over the years in terms of analysing and putting good cultures together. So I thought I'd ask you really what you feel HR leaders and departments can do to really help influence and impact a company culture.
First of all, it's about understanding what do we really want to achieve as an organization. Yeah, and this is the vision which is being set by the leadership of the company. And obviously, all the organizations these days are talking about inclusive culture, the culture of belonging and engagement. This is pretty similar across the board. But then the second thing kicks in. That's the leadership walking the talk. Because if you talk about one thing, but then people see different behaviors from the leaders, no matter what they say, it's not going to help you to drive that culture. So educating the leaders and helping them to make this transition to a more open, a more inclusive culture, that's where HR has a critical role to play. Because as an HR leader, you are embedded into the team of or a client group you support. And you see the behaviors, and there, what I would expect from a solid, reliable HR business partner, trusted HR business partner, is speaking up and sharing what are the expectations, what are the concerns, coaching the leaders, having open dialogues with leaders on what do they observe and how they can support their teams better and how they can demonstrate these behaviors better. I think that's a critical role. And one of the things which I've done with one of my client groups here in BD, I saw that we definitely need to bond better as a team because the team was a bit fragmented and working in a stovepipe. And then I did design an intervention. We invited an external team coach who helped us to develop really a journey. It took us about 6 months to go through this journey as a team. But one of the areas we were addressing is how do we become more effective as a team? And then the second area is how do we drive that culture of cross-functional cooperation within this team, helping the whole organization to see that we shouldn't be working as stovepipes, but we should be breaking the borders and looking holistically at how we cooperate together and how do we bring value to the company as being a stronger organization.
Hi everybody, it's Paul Thomas here. I hope that you're well and you're enjoying the podcast so far. Thank you once again for your continued support listening to the podcast. I just wanted to break into the recording to talk to you about a really exciting new partnership that EMEA Recruitment has along with Operation Smile. And as founder of EMEA Recruitment, it's an honour and a privilege to announce this partnership. Personally, I was born with a cleft lip and palate, so the mission of Operation Smile is something that I have a strong personal connection with. It's not an understatement to say that the dentists and surgeons that helped me were life changers. It's not only about the actual operations that take place, the support and care post and pre-operation are beyond value, and from personal experience I can only say that I'd not be the confident, happy person I am today without this support. I want to help children experience the support and care and skill that I experienced on my journey and hope that we can do this along with Operation Smile. Every 3 minutes, a child is born with a cleft lip or cleft palate, and the mission of Operation Smile is to provide help and support to these children through providing 6,000 medical volunteers across 80 countries who are dedicated to help these children with facial conditions, most commonly cleft lip and cleft palate. More than 200,000 children are born with a cleft every year, and they are often unable to speak, eat, socialise or even smile. However, it can take as little as 45 minutes and cost just €180 or 180 Swiss francs for Operation Smile to provide the child with life-changing surgery. Now, in partnership with Operation Smile, EMEA Recruitment is raising valuable funds and aiming to create 100 new smiles to support the organisation to provide free surgeries for children and young adults all over the world. Please help us by donating through the link in the bio or get in touch to see how your company can help get involved too. For the moment, I'll leave you to carry on listening to the rest of the podcast, but if there's anything I can do in terms of answering any questions or finding out how you can help and support EMEA Recruitment and Operation Smile, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you once again and enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of these things you're mentioning here about what you want to achieve, how can you be more effective, and being very results focused, they do fall into the path of the BI and data field, which obviously is something that is still relatively new, but it's clearly here to stay, and it's going to impact our lives inside and outside of work more and more. But with this approach you mentioned, where it is results focused, looking at what you want to get from something, being more efficient and effective. I mean, how do you feel that BI and data is going to assist HR or change HR in the future?
Well, if you want to achieve a progress in something, you should be able to measure it. You are not able to do it if you don't have the data behind. Here in BD, I think that we are doing a really good progress. We have Workday as our HR system. And then with the help of a specific analytical tool, which is called Vizier, we're able to extract a lot of interesting analytics on the way how we perform as an organization, and in various fields, in inclusion and diversity, in retaining talent, in predictive analytics of what might be the trends, like retention trends in the organization. And of course, things like turnover, aging population, and so on. Because I think that these days, without data like that, you are not able to make the reliable decisions from the point of view of where do you have the pain points, where do you need to bring new, fresh talent, what are the critical areas from succession pipeline perspective. But you know, one thing which is very critical here, you can have a lot of data, but if this data is not making sense, then of course it will not help you. So the data quality, educating the leaders, the managers on how they should be populating the system, that's very important, because you can go self-sufficient and tell the managers, okay, now you are responsible to populate the data in Workday when you hire people, when you separate with people, when you develop people. But you cannot rely on this 100%. You always need to come back and educate the leaders, remind them, because otherwise the data in the system will not make sense.
No, I think things you mentioned there around a lot about people, obviously, and I think, you know, trying to bring BI and data aligned with people and recruitments and retention and managing their success. I mean, do you think there is there's a danger potentially that people are analysed almost by data and KPIs, you know, in the future, because it's going to be a lot easier to access what someone has brought to the table, looking at it in terms of figures. So, you know, we're going to become a bit more KPI led in terms of people and growth and retention, and that's almost how people will be managed in the future more and more by KPIs and data.
I don't think so. I think that each organization needs to find the right balance between managing by data, and then, of course, data will not help you to work on the areas like engagement and the sense of belonging and the culture piece. I think that from the perspective of this more sort of softer elements, you should relate to the data you get from the engagement surveys, which help you to track how you are performing. But of course, without having the leaders who understand what's happening in their organization, how they should be performing in certain situations, coaching, developing their people, their teams, you won't be making any progress. So as HR, you need to tell the leaders, okay, look, based on the numbers, here what we see. And I can give you an example of inclusion and diversity, and again, one of the examples I can give you with one of the leadership teams I support, we looked at the I&D data. And we realized that in the last couple of years, we didn't make a progress. Okay, data helps you here because you identify the issue. But then how do you improve it? Then you need to work with the leadership team, getting their buy-in, that they understand that diverse teams are stronger than non-diverse teams. And then how do you change their behaviors? How do you embed it into the way how they recruit people, develop people, promote people? That's something which you have to drive as an HR business partner. And this is again relates to this change management piece we spoke about earlier, Paul, because it's definitely a cultural change. And it's about push from the top, setting the right targets. Because again, my experience tells me if you want to make a step change in the inclusion and diversity space, there should be targets set. There should be certain measurable expectations set. So, you start with data, you do the change management, and then you again enter into the data piece where you measure your performance. Because then you look at how your I&D stats are doing in 1 year, 2 years from now, in order to understand if you're moving in the right direction.
And I mean, obviously, everything you mentioned here throughout the podcast so far, it shows a bit of the challenges and the complexity of the HR discipline, because, I always think it's the mindset of somebody who's successful in HR. It's got to be somebody who's very, very patient and very empathetic to the people around them, because the reality is, if you're working in something like IT, you can train somebody to become an Excel super user in a certain amount of time. But with HR, because you're dealing with cultural change, you're dealing with changing mindsets that have been embedded in individuals, from when they were born. There are a lot of the ways people think and act are from their parents or their surroundings. So when you're trying to do these things, HR is a very challenging area, because it can take a long time to change someone's approach. It can take a long time to change a culture of a business around D&I. So I thought I'd ask you what got you into HR in the first place, because obviously, I wondered if there was a specific driver towards it, or indeed whether HR found you, because you often find that the careers choose people rather than people choose their careers. So I just thought it'd be interesting to find out a bit about your journey into HR in the first place, really.
Well, great question, Paul, because if I look at my background, I'm an economist by education, and I started my career initially in finance. Then I was not too much excited about it. I'm okay with numbers, but I don't like them. And then I got into sales and marketing, which I liked because it's a very dynamic environment and you have to work with a lot of people. So I was sort of thinking that that's probably where my career belongs until a pure coincidence, which brought me into HR. And when I started doing my first steps in HR a long time ago now, I realized that this is something which I like. And to answer your question, I think you really need to feel passion to that profession, because it's not easy. In reality, if you look at HR, you do not have the real hierarchical power in the organization. You cannot just go and direct the managers in sales, in manufacturing, in finance and IT. You have to do it like that. Nobody will listen to you. So that's why you mentioned a very good word, patience. You need to be patient and you need to be persistent in order to drive the changes or the projects you want to drive. But before you do that, one of the critical elements in this profession is trust. Because until you build the trust with the leaders you support, until they understand that here is the value you can bring as an HR professional, Of course, they will do the things which they have to do. They will do the performance reviews because this is required by the company just to tick the box. They will communicate the comp statements in the end of the year, and more or less that's it. But how do you drive HR that it becomes an embedded part, that you get that seat at the leadership table and people listen to you? The fundamental thing is trust. And to gain this trust, you need to show the leaders that you have the patience, that you really put your heart into what you do, and you know what you do. Of course, you need to be able to connect the dots. You need to be able to look at the business strategy and understand what are the mechanics behind and how the business is operating. One of the leaders, one of the managers in HR I worked with quite some time ago, the guy was very experienced HR professional, and he taught me a lot. He was saying, how I would evaluate a successful HR business partner. This is somebody who can sit with the leadership team without a leader and facilitate a meeting. So for me, in the beginning, I was not understanding exactly what he means, but now, after I passed through several challenges within HR and learned my lessons, now I understand exactly what he meant. Because as an HR leader, a successful HR leader, you are requested to know these things and understand how the business is working and how HR contributes to it.
Oh, it's really interesting. And I mean, obviously you've touched on there how you got into HR in the first place. And I think like a lot of people, it happened almost out of circumstance. But actually when you realize you enjoyed it and, had fun and were probably passionate about this, then actually it then shaped the next 20, 30 years of your life. And I mean, obviously over that time you've moved from Russia, had a number of years in Switzerland, had some time in South Africa, all working for very large and well-known businesses. And now obviously in your current role, in the HR director role, I thought I'd ask you really what it feels like to be in this HR director position, really.
Well, it's a complex question, Paul. And it's not that easy to answer it straight away because it also depends on the customers I have. I have several customers I support. And with these customers, there are various priorities we are working on. Some are very strategic. So if I look at one of my customers, which is a large global organization, global supply chain, it's clear that it's very much about setting the strategy. And as you know, now supply organizations across the globe, because of pandemic and even prior to pandemic, started to go through huge transformations. Because it's driven by the artificial intelligence, it's driven by the need to become more proactive versus reactive, driving a lot of predictive analytics on the demand side. So we started the journey to transform the organization actually before even COVID hit us. So the capabilities for the future, how do you develop them? How do you become a more agile supply chain organization? Again, moving from the stovepipes of warehousing, logistics, supply planning, and so on and so forth, into process-oriented end-to-end organization. So that's why I say it's much more strategic in the nature of working on things like organizational design and making sure that we do develop or acquire the right type of talent. On the other side of the spectrum, it's the operations. And when I say operations, I mean manufacturing side of the organization where you have plants. And BD has 18 plants in Europe, plus 2 large global distribution centers, which I'm responsible for from HR perspective. And, this is a different animal because these guys, they live in a very high-pressured environment. They have a lot of demands from the point of view of safety and quality. and delivering on the efficiency improvement exercises. And there you have to make sure that you build, first of all, the environment where people are safe, where people are being developed, and it's much more operational. Though, of course, you have the certain initiatives. And for example, one of the initiatives we put in place 2 years ago, and now we are developing it, is called Good Job Strategy. So from the strategic perspective, what we want to achieve is to have a sustainable supply of the workforce for our plants and make the work life of our people at the plants and safe, comfortable, that we satisfy the needs related to fair pay and fair benefits. But on the other hand, it's very tactical because you get a new line. You need to install this line, and this line would require you to hire 100 new operators. So then you need to make sure that these operators are there, trained and ready before the line goes live. And things happen sort of much more often, and the challenges happen much more often. So that's why if I look at my day, one day can be, 70% strategic, 30% tactical. The other day might be completely other way around, where you have to fight a fire and you work with respective HRBP of a plant, helping her or him to face the challenges, the daily challenges. And this is actually what I love about the job, because in HR, it's never boring. There is something happening every day, which, challenges you intellectually and helps you to keep this human connection with the people you work with.
I mean, what I find really interesting is a lot of what you've mentioned in that answer, but also through the podcast as well, is the need for results and to be as efficient as possible, being proactive and reacting to the demands really of the people you have around you who are your partners in the business. But then on the flip side, the one of the it could be a challenge, or the pluses of a good HR professional is that patience is a big part of it. Trying to think more long term and understanding that change doesn't happen overnight. So you've got a bit of a conflict there where your results are expected very quickly, but the reality is that a lot of the bigger things take time, and to change people's mindsets definitely takes a long period of time. So I think with the HR, it's always quite a challenge on that side to get the balance between those two things. I mean, I thought I'd just ask you your opinion on that and see how you've maybe dealt with that over the years.
You know what? There is no silver bullet here. I do not have any recipe. And again, each organization I worked for was very different from the perspective of how you need to balance it. So you need to use your common sense and then again relate to what the organization is trying to achieve. One of the companies I worked for, and it was quite a while ago, it was a service company in the service industry of surveying, testing, verification. For me, it was a fundamental shift because prior to that, I was working in a purely manufacturing environment, 3 plants and a very different approach to how you build the HR strategy. And when you join a very fast-moving environment where decisions have to be made on the spot, because if you are not agile and quick enough, the customer will go to another inspection company and you lose your revenue. And then again, you need to understand how do you make this shift, first of all, yourself, personally, mentally, to fit into this new environment, into this new faster pace. And then it triggers your thinking, okay, and from people implications, what does it mean? What type of people do we need? How do we develop those people within the organization? And then one of the things, for example, I've done in this company was the assessment of all the leadership teams we had across the region. And we were operating in like more than 13 countries, if I'm not mistaken, because it was quite a long time ago. And then what type of leaders do you need in order to operate effectively in this environment? Because you start with the vision, and then you understand how you deliver to that vision and what would be the quickest and most reliable vehicles to help you to get there. And again, I would refer to something which I said earlier, Paul. The leadership has to be there. The right leadership, and leadership has to walk the talk and implement it. So that's why with the chief operating officer of that region, we were fully aligned that, in order for us to be more successful as a business, we need to have more agile teams in the countries where we operated in the region. And thus, there was a very obvious, clear decision. We need to do the evaluation of these teams and then help to strengthen these teams. So to answer a question, again, you need to apply your common sense as an HR business partner and see with the business goals, with the environment you are operating in, what makes sense to achieve these results, building the right culture, building the right organization in the most efficient way.
And you've talked a bit there about building the right organization and teams and assessing the skills that are needed and development internally and externally as well. And I think, that's always a good place to start, understanding exactly what you want versus what you need before you start on any changes internally or externally into the business related to talent. But I know over the years you've been involved a lot on recruitment and talent and retention on that side. So I thought I'd ask the question really just to find out what your thoughts are on recruitment, because what I've tended to find out over the years is that, there's quite a number of HR people who don't like doing that part of the job. So I didn't know how recruitment makes you feel.
I like recruitment. And you know what I miss now in the recruitment process is the face-to-face interaction. Clearly, I realized when we all went online, and the interviews now are happening almost 100% online, that getting this human touch, at least at the final stage of the interviews, feeling that chemistry is a bit more difficult now online versus offline. And from the point of view of the recruitment process, it gives you an opportunity to meet new people, expand your network. And even if you don't hire the person you are interviewing, it's still important that you do a good job because you are not only there as an HR professional to assess the candidate, you are also there to sell the company, and you are there contributing to the candidate's experience. Because again, even if a person is not hired, she or he will go back and social media, networking, friends, whatever, will say, okay, that was a lousy experience. This guy who interviewed me in this company was not polite or whatever, didn't answer my questions. So that's where probably my experience working in sales helps me. Because every time I'm trying to sell the company in a good way, talking about the culture, talking about the environment, the leadership, the vision, the culture, and what to expect if you join the organization. So I like doing it, and I like investing time into it. I'm not a 30 minutes interview manager. I always invest 1 hour into an interview. Because again, it's not only for you to scan the candidate, it's also about you explaining to the candidate in a transparent way what is this organization about you are trying to join. And it has to be also realistic. That's what I noticed. You shouldn't be overselling. And if you see certain challenges in a job or in a function you are interviewing for, you have to put it on the table because it helps the candidate to calibrate what actually to expect if I join the company. And if you paint a very rosy picture, but then in reality, it's a lot of hard work or a tough manager, or you need to go through a huge project, then of course there will be a disappointment. And especially now, when there is such a war for talent and this whole notion of great resignation happening now, reaching not only US but also Europe, you have to be really mindful of how you run the process of bringing a talent on board in an efficient way, but also making sure that there is this mental signature happening on the both sides.
No, I think it comes back to something you mentioned earlier, the trust elements to it. You know, I think that more and more now, with people working remotely, you know, you don't have the ability to go and just randomly, you know, sit with someone at their desk. So you've got to trust that they are, you know, they're bringing the right skills to the table with the right approach, and they're going to represent the team and the business well. But it's also, as you mentioned there yourself, you know, when you go out on an interview, the person that you're meeting wants to trust that they're being told the truth about the whole story as well, and not you know, walk into a business and after 2 or 3 weeks realize they've made a huge mistake because they were missold the role or the company in the interviews. Because there's no doubt that the biggest cost of recruitment is when the wrong hire is made. I mean, I think it's very difficult to judge completely what the cost is, but there's a lot of time and effort that goes into it, and morale is dented if the wrong person comes in, you know. So it's good to spend the time with people, as you say, and build that relationship with them. And then, you know, if they're the right cultural fit, then usually people can learn how to do parts of the job. But if not the right cultural fit, then and the trust isn't there, then it's not a good foundation for a successful partnership, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, you touch on a very important point, Paul, because when I have a leader who tells me, oh, I can understand this person in 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, I can tell you if it's a good guy or not a good guy. Then I normally would have a conversation with this manager and explain why she or he needs to invest more time than 5 minutes into understanding if it's the right fit and if that would be a good, solid acquisition for the company. Because again, you need to invest time in order to understand and also build the trust. Because you cannot build trust in 5 minutes. And again, it's not about you as a manager just, you know, in 5 minutes deciding if it's good or bad. It's also about the person on the other side of the table whom you need to convince now these days more and more that your organization is the right place to join. And that's why you also need to prepare for an interview. You cannot, allow to read the CV 2 minutes before you meet a person. And I would normally also go on LinkedIn profile, have a look what's there. If we are using a recruiter, either internal recruiter or external recruiter, I would always look at the brief or talk with the recruiter beforehand to understand what are the pluses, minuses, strong sides, what do I need to explore during the interview. Because also when people feel that you are asking the right questions, that you invested your time into understanding who they are prior to the interview, that helps you to build that trust with an individual. And this actually helps you and makes your job easier as a recruiter, because when people feel that trust, they open up better. And this can help you a lot to understand if it's the right person for the company or not.
No, it's very, very true. I mean, and as we both mentioned, you know, it does then save a lot of time and effort in the long run. So if you invest, say, an hour rather than 10, 20 minutes, you actually save a lot of time in the long run by hiring the right person in. And I think everybody has a good experience. And I mean, even at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out with the individual in the interview process, at least that person leaves the interview room with a strong identification of the brand of the business. So whether it's BD or Unilever or whoever it might be, you know, they leave the interview saying good things to their network about the experience they've had. Whereas if they only have a very short interview and they feel like they've been rushed out the room, then I think we all know that people talk about negative experiences a lot more they do positive ones. So yeah, the brand image gets quite damaged from that approach. So it's interesting, and to know that's what you've put in place with the business now, but also in the past. And then what I thought just to end the podcast on, Tim, I know we started with a fairly light-hearted question, and I thought I'd end with a light-hearted one as well. Obviously we talked a bit about your move into HR in the first place. But I thought I'd ask you if you could turn back time and talk to an 18-year-old version of yourself. What advice would you give the 18-year-old version of Tim today?
Be open-minded. And don't have any preconceived ideas. The world is full of surprises and full of opportunities, and you just you need to understand what you want to achieve as an individual, and you need to get that vision of I want to develop as somebody who would be successful. And, I never thought that I will be making a career in HR, but I wanted to develop. I wanted to move forward. That's why I went into university. I got my degree, and then I started working. And my first job, very, very first job when I was still in the university, I was an interpreter. And through this work, I started meeting people, and then these people learned that actually I'm studying economics in the university, and they said, "Oh, by the way, if you are studying economics, why don't you go and work in our finance team?" So that's why I'm saying, don't try to be preconceived in drawing the exact solid line of how your career wants to go. Of course, you need to understand that in some time you want to be, in charge of an HR team or leading a recruitment function or whatever. But the way how you get there might be very, very different. So that's why for me, enjoying what you do and connecting with people and being open-minded would be probably something which I would say.
No, it's really interesting, and I think one of the common themes through the podcast is the connection with people, whether it's as business partners, whether it's to shape your career, whether it's been going through changes internally in the business in one way or another. It's all largely down to the relationships with people that make it the ones efficient and effective that are that way. So I think that's it's always good to hear this from someone like yourself, and I know obviously it's a challenge these days for these connections to be made as easy as they were a few years ago, but they can still happen, as you've proven earlier on when we talk about the virtual team games. So there's still plenty of ways around it. It's a challenge, but there's ways around it, and you're doing great work on that side by the sounds of it. So it's great to get your thoughts and approach on these things, Tim. So as I say, it's been great to have you as a guest on the podcast today. Really appreciate all your time going through this. I know the network will take a lot from it as well. So if they want to connect with you, Tim, what's the best way that the network can reach out to you?
Well, first of all, Paul, thank you very much for inviting me. It was a pleasure, and thank you very much for your questions. Sometimes we do not spend enough time reflecting on very important fundamental things. So it was a great opportunity to do that together with you today. The best way to connect with me is via LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn with a bit of longer name. My full name is Timothy. So if you look for Timothy Mezheritsky there, and I'm sure that there will be more details in this podcast where you can find the link. So that would be the best way to connect with me.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, Tim, what we'll do, we'll send your LinkedIn profile link around with the podcast when it goes live as well. So it'll be easy for people to reach out to you, and I won't challenge them on the spelling of your first and second name. So we'll make it as easy as possible. So huge thanks again, Tim. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Paul. Same to you and your family. Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. If you'd like to reach out to Paul or myself, please feel free to send a connection through on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to listen to previous episodes of the podcast, you can find them all at our website, www.emearecruitment.eu.